The stagecoach door swung open before the horses had fully stopped, and Helena Sutton stumbled onto the dusty main street of Julesburg, Colorado, tears streaming down her face as the entire town watched her humiliation unfold. The year was 1878, and summer had turned the prairie into an oven. Helena clutched her torn dress at the shoulder, her carefully pinned auburn hair now falling in disarray around her face. Behind her, the stagecoach driver was shouting something about thieves and bandits, but all she could hear was the rushing of blood in her ears and the whispers that had already begun among the townspeople lining the wooden sidewalks. She had been on her way to meet her intended husband, a banker named Frederick Chambers, who had courted her through letters for 6 months. Instead, 3 masked men had stopped the coach 15 miles outside of town, taken every valuable the passengers possessed, and in the struggle, her dress had been torn nearly to her waist. The other passengers, a merchant and his wife, had given her a shawl to cover herself, but everyone could see what had happened. Everyone knew. "My reputation is ruined," she sobbed, standing there in the middle of the street as curious onlookers gathered. The words came out broken and desperate. A woman alone, arriving in town in torn clothing, having been accosted by bandits, would be the subject of gossip for months. Years, even. No respectable man would want her now, no matter that she had done nothing wrong. "Mine wasn't great either, darling," came a deep voice from behind her. Helena spun around, nearly losing her balance. The man who had spoken stood leaning against a hitching post outside the saloon. He was tall, perhaps 30 years old, with sun-darkened skin and dark blonde hair that needed cutting. His clothes were worn but clean, the clothes of a working cowboy, and his blue eyes held something she couldn't quite identify. Sympathy, maybe, or understanding. "I beg your pardon," she managed to say through her tears. He pushed off from the post and walked toward her with an easy, confident stride. "Name's Lucas Lawson," he said, pulling off his hat. "And I couldn't help but overhear your predicament. Seems to me you're upset about what people might think." "What people will think," she corrected, her voice bitter. "Not might. Will." Lucas looked around at the gathered crowd with an expression of mild contempt. "Well, seeing as how I've been accused of everything from cattle rustling to murder in my time, and at least half of it wasn't true, I figure I understand something about unfair reputations." He turned back to her, and his expression softened. "You look like you could use a hot meal and a place to sit down that isn't in the middle of the street with everyone gawking at you." Helena felt fresh tears well up, but these were different. This stranger was offering her kindness when she expected none. "I don't even know you." "No, madam, you don't. But I know what it's like to arrive in a town where everyone's already made up their mind about you." He glanced at the crowd again. "And I know these people. Give them 5 minutes, and they'll have invented a whole story about what happened to you that's got nothing to do with the truth." He was right, she realized. She could already see the women leaning together, whispering. The men looking at her with expressions ranging from pity to something far less charitable. "My intended," she started to say, but her voice broke. "The banker?" Lucas asked. "Frederick Chambers," she nodded. Something flickered across Lucas's face. "Well, I reckon he'll hear about this before you can reach his door. Might be best if you had a moment to collect yourself first. Mrs. Chen runs a boarding house just down the street. Respectable place. Clean. She doesn't hold with gossip." Helena wanted to protest, to maintain some shred of dignity, but what dignity did she have left? Her dress was torn, her hair was a mess, and she was standing in the middle of a strange town sobbing in front of everyone. This cowboy, this Lucas Lawson with his admittedly poor reputation, was the only person offering her any help at all. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. He met her eyes directly. "Because somebody should, and because I remember what it felt like when nobody did." That decided her. She nodded, and Lucas offered her his arm. She took it, feeling the solid strength of him, and let him guide her through the crowd. People parted for them, their whispers following like a wake behind a boat. Mrs. Chen's boarding house was indeed respectable, a neat two-story building painted white with blue shutters. The proprietor herself was a small Chinese woman with sharp eyes and an efficient manner. She took one look at Helena's distress and Lucas's serious expression and ushered them inside without a word. "Room 6 is open," Mrs. Chen said, her accent slight but noticeable. "You need hot water, something to eat." "Both, if you please," Lucas said. He looked at Helena. "Miss, you have any money? Any at all?" Helena shook her head miserably. "The bandits took everything. My bag, my money, even my mother's ring." Lucas pulled out a worn leather wallet and counted out several bills. "This should cover a week's room and board, Mrs. Chen, with meals." The older woman's eyebrows rose. "Lucas Lawson, you paying for a lady's room? People will talk." "They're already talking," Lucas said dryly. "Might as well give them something true to talk about." He turned to Helena. "I'll leave you here to get cleaned up and rested. But if you need anything, I work at the Triple Bar Ranch about 5 miles north of town. Anyone can tell you how to find it." "I cannot possibly accept this," Helena said, though even as she spoke, she knew she had no choice. "I don't know how I'll repay you. Don't worry about that now." Lucas put his hat back on. "Just get yourself settled." He paused at the door. "And miss, whatever Frederick Chambers says or does when he hears about this, remember it tells you everything about him and nothing about you." Then he was gone, leaving Helena standing in the clean, simple front room of the boarding house with Mrs. Chen watching her with those shrewd eyes. "Come," the older woman said, not unkindly. "Let me show you the room. Then I bring water for washing and food. You look like you need both." The room was small but clean, with a single bed covered in a patched quilt, a washstand, and a window that looked out onto the side street. Helena sat down on the bed and finally let herself cry in earnest, great heaving sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. She had left Philadelphia 3 weeks ago, full of hope and nervous excitement. Her parents had died the previous year within months of each other, leaving her with almost nothing. Her father's business debts had consumed most of the estate, and the small amount that remained would not last long. When Frederick's letters had arrived through a matrimonial advertisement service, his promises of a comfortable life in Colorado had seemed like salvation. Now she had nothing. Less than nothing. She was alone in a strange town, her reputation in tatters, dependent on the charity of a cowboy who by his own admission had a questionable past. Mrs. Chen returned with a large pitcher of hot water and clean towels. "You wash. I bring food soon." She paused at the door. "Lucas is good man. Complicated maybe, some trouble in his past, but good heart." "What kind of trouble?" Helena asked. Mrs. Chen shrugged. "Not my story to tell, but he never hurt anybody who didn't have it coming, that's what I think." She left, closing the door quietly behind her. Helena stripped off her ruined dress and washed, scrubbing away the dust and sweat and tears. She had one other dress in her small carpet bag, thankfully still strapped to the top of the stagecoach where she had managed to retrieve it. It was a simple gray cotton, far less fine than the blue silk now lying in a torn heap on the floor, but it was intact and modest. She was just finishing pinning her hair into some semblance of order when Mrs. Chen returned with a tray. Chicken soup, fresh bread, and hot tea. The aroma made Helena's stomach clench with sudden hunger. She had not eaten since early that morning. "Eat," Mrs. Chen commanded. "Everything seems worse on empty stomach." Helena ate, and the older woman was right. The hot food helped, though it could not chase away the cold knot of fear in her chest. What would she do? Where could she go, this Frederick Chambers, Mrs. Chen said, settling into the room's single chair. You love him, the question startled Helena. I don't know him well enough to love him. We have only corresponded through letters. Mrs. Chen's expression suggested she had opinions about that arrangement. You come all this way for man you do not know and do not love. I had few other options, Helena said quietly. I needed security, a home. He seemed like a good man. Seemed, Mrs. Chen repeated. Well, we see what kind of man he really is, yes. Good man will not blame you for bandits. But Helena knew better than to hope. She had seen the expressions on the townspeople's faces. To them, she was ruined goods now, damaged suspect. It did not matter that she had done nothing wrong. A woman's reputation was more fragile than glass, and twice as impossible to repair once broken. She spent the rest of the afternoon in her room, listening to the sounds of Julesburg outside her window. Wagons rattling past, horses nickering, voices calling to one another. It all seemed so normal, so everyday, while her entire life had fallen apart. As evening approached, there was a knock at the front door downstairs. Helena heard male voices, one of them loud and angry. Her heart sank. She knew that had to be Frederick. Mrs. Chen's voice rose in protest, but then there were heavy footsteps on the stairs. The bedroom door flew open without so much as a courtesy knock. Frederick Chambers was exactly as he had described himself in his letters. Tall, well-dressed, in his late 30s with dark hair and a neatly trimmed beard. But his expression held none of the warmth his letters had suggested. He looked at her with cold, appraising eyes, taking in her simple dress and hastily pinned hair. So it's true, he said without preamble. I had hoped the stories were exaggerated, but I can see they were not. Helena stood, trying to maintain her dignity. Mr. Chambers, I can explain. There is nothing to explain, Miss Sutton. You arrived in town in a state of undress, having been accosted by bandits. The entire town is already talking about it. I have a reputation to maintain in this community. I am a respected businessman. I cannot possibly marry a woman who has been compromised. I was not compromised, Helena said, her voice shaking with anger now rather than tears. I was robbed. My dress was torn in the struggle when one of the bandits grabbed me. Nothing else happened. That is not what people are saying. Then people are wrong. Frederick's expression did not change. It does not matter what is true. What matters is what people believe. I cannot have my name associated with scandal. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. I am not without compassion. Here is money for your return ticket to Philadelphia. I suggest you leave on tomorrow's stage. He set the envelope on the washstand and turned to leave. Wait, Helena said, her voice breaking. Please, I have nothing to return to, no family, no home. I came here because I believed your letters, your promises. Frederick paused at the door. Then I suggest you learn to be more careful about believing promises, Miss Sutton. The world is a harsh place for women without protection, but that is hardly my fault. Good evening. He left, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. Helena heard the front door close. For a long moment she simply stood there, numb with shock and disbelief. Then she sank down onto the bed, but this time the tears would not come. She felt empty, hollowed out. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, her face tight with anger. That man is Dog, she announced. No, worse than Dog. Dog has more loyalty and heart. He is right, though, Helena said dully. No respectable man will want me now. Then maybe respectable not what you need, Mrs. Chen said sharply. Maybe you need good. They are not always same thing. She crossed the room and picked up the envelope Frederick had left, opening it without ceremony. Her expression darkened. He gives you $10. 10, as if that makes him generous man. The train ticket from here to Philadelphia costs nearly $40. Helena had not even thought to check. Of course, Frederick's supposed compassion was nothing more than a gesture to make himself feel better, to tell himself and others that he had done his duty. $10 would barely keep her fed for 2 weeks if she was careful. "What will I do?" she whispered. Mrs. Chen sat down beside her on the bed. "Tonight you do nothing. You sleep. Tomorrow we figure out." She patted Helena's hand with surprising gentleness. "You are stronger than you think, I can see. This is not end of your story, just bad chapter." After Mrs. Chen left, Helena lay down on the bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling as the room darkened with the setting sun. She thought about Philadelphia, about her parents' graves she would likely never see again. She thought about the dreams she had carried west with her, dreams of a new life, a fresh start, maybe even happiness eventually. All of it was ashes now. She must have slept because the next thing she knew, bright morning sunlight was streaming through the window. For a moment, she forgot where she was and what had happened. Then it all came rushing back, and the weight of it pressed down on her chest like a stone. There was a gentle knock at the door. "Miss Sutton," Mrs. Chen's voice called. "You have visitor." Helena's heart jumped. Had Frederick reconsidered, or worse, had the marshal come to question her about the robbery? She straightened her dress as best she could and opened the door. Lucas Lawson stood in the hallway, hat in his hands, looking uncertain. "Morning, Miss Sutton. I heard about what happened with Chambers. Wanted to check that you were all right." News traveled fast in small towns. "I am managing," Helena said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Mrs. Chen told me he gave you money for a train ticket, except it's not near enough to actually buy one." Helena felt heat rise to her cheeks. "My circumstances are hardly your concern, Mr. Lawson." "Lucas," he corrected. "And you are right, they are not my concern. Except I made them my concern yesterday when I decided to help you." He met her eyes steadily. "I have a proposition for you if you will hear me out." "I am not that desperate," Helena said sharply. Lucas blinked, then his eyes widened as he realized what she thought he was suggesting. "No. Lord, no, that's not what I meant at all." He ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely distressed. "I should have phrased that better. What I meant was, I have a legitimate job offer for you." Helena's anger deflated into confusion. "A job? Can we sit down somewhere and talk properly?" Lucas asked. "There's a lot to explain, and I would rather not do it in a hallway." Mrs. Chen materialized from somewhere downstairs. "You can use the parlor, I bring coffee." They went downstairs to a small, neat sitting room. Lucas waited until Helena was seated before taking a chair across from her. He looked nervous, which was oddly endearing on a man who seemed otherwise so capable and confident. "All right," he began. "Here is the situation. I work as foreman at the Triple Bar Ranch. It is owned by a man named Samuel Barrett. Good man, fair employer. His wife Catherine died 2 years ago, and he has been trying to manage the house and raise his daughter alone while also running the ranch. It is not working. The house is chaos, his daughter is running wild, and Samuel is stretched too thin." "I fail to see how this concerns me," Helena said. "He needs a housekeeper," Lucas continued. "Someone to manage the household, do the cooking and cleaning, help with his daughter. He has been trying to hire someone for months, but most women in town either are already married or want to be, and the few who have tried did not last more than a week." "Why not?" Lucas grimaced. "Partly because the ranch is isolated. Partly because Samuel's daughter, Lily, is 12 years old and has decided she does not want a mother substitute, so she makes life difficult for anyone who tries. And partly because Samuel is so deep in his grief still that he is not the easiest person to work for." "You are not making this sound appealing," Helena pointed out. "I know. But here is what I can promise you. The pay is fair, $30 a month plus room and board. The work is hard but honest. Samuel will not bother you beyond what is appropriate for an employer. And it gets you out of town, away from the gossips, and gives you time to figure out what you want to do next." Helena considered this. It was not what she had imagined when she left Philadelphia, but then nothing had gone as she had imagined. "Why are you doing this? Helping me?" Lucas was quiet for a moment. "You asked me that yesterday, and I gave you a partial answer. Here is the whole truth. 3 years ago, I was accused of stealing cattle from a ranch where I worked down in New Mexico. I did not do it, but the owner's son was the real thief, and he made sure the blame fell on me. I got run out of town by a mob in the middle of the night, lucky to escape with my life." He turned his hat in his hands, not meeting her eyes. "For months after that, I could not get work anywhere. My reputation had spread. Everyone assumed I was guilty. I lived rough, nearly starved a couple of times. Then Samuel Barrett gave me a chance. He said he believed in judging a man by what he did, not by what people said about him. He offered me a job, and I have been at Triple Bar ever since." Lucas looked up at her then. "Yesterday, when I saw you standing in that street with everyone looking at you like you were something dirty, like you had done something wrong just because something bad happened to you, it made me angry, made me remember. So yes, I am helping you because I think you deserve help, and because I know Samuel needs it, and because maybe, sometimes, things work out the way they are supposed to." Helena felt something shift in her chest. This man, this near stranger, understood her situation in a way no one else could because he had lived it himself. "What if his daughter truly makes my life miserable? Then you can leave," Lucas said simply. "I am not asking you to sign your life away. Just give it a try. If it does not work, we will figure something else out." The word slipped out before Helena could stop it. Lucas met her eyes, and something passed between them, some recognition or connection that made Helena's breath catch. "Yes," he said quietly. If you are willing, Mrs. Chen chose that moment to bustle in with coffee and warm biscuits. The older woman looked between them with knowing eyes but said nothing, merely served them and left again. Helena sipped her coffee, using the time to think. She could take Frederick's insufficient money and try to make her way back east, though she would likely run out of funds long before reaching Philadelphia. She could try to find work in Julesburg itself, though that seemed unlikely given how quickly gossip had spread. Or she could accept Lucas's offer and at least have respectable employment, room and board, and time to plan her next move. When she looked at it that way, there was really only one choice. "All right," she said. "I will try it. When would Mr. Barrett like me to start?" Lucas's face broke into a genuine smile, and Helena realized it was the first time she had seen him smile. It transformed his whole appearance, made him look younger and less careworn. "Is today too soon? I rode into town specifically to ask around about hiring someone for him. If you are willing, I can take you back with me now." "I have very little to pack," Helena said. That was an understatement. She had one dress, one set of undergarments, a hairbrush, and nothing else to her name. "We can sort that out," Lucas said. "Samuel's wife was about your height. I am sure he would not mind if you used some of her things, at least until you can afford your own." An hour later, Helena found herself seated on a wagon next to Lucas, her pitiful carpet bag at her feet, leaving Julesburg behind. The road north followed the South Platte River, winding through prairie grassland that stretched to the horizon in every direction. The sky was huge here, bigger than any sky Helena had seen before, an endless bowl of blue overhead. Lucas drove in comfortable silence, not pushing her to talk. Helena appreciated that. She needed time to absorb everything that had happened, to adjust to this sudden shift in her circumstances. "What should I know about Mr. Barrett?" she finally asked. "Samuel is 42, been ranching his whole life. Built the triple bar up from nothing over the past 20 years. He is honest, sometimes to a fault, does not suffer fools, but he is patient with people who genuinely try. He loved his wife deeply, and losing her nearly broke him. And his daughter," Lucas's expression grew more complicated. "Lily is smart, probably too smart for her own good. She loved her mother too, and she has not forgiven the world for taking her. She has driven off 4 potential housekeepers by putting salt in the sugar bowl, letting chickens loose in the house, and once, memorably, hiding a snake in someone's bed." Helena's eyes widened. "A snake, a harmless garter snake, but yes, the woman quit on the spot." Lucas glanced at her. "I am not telling you this to scare you. Well, maybe a little, but mostly so you know what you are walking into. Lily is testing everyone to see if they will stay or leave like her mother did, even though Catherine dying was not something anyone could control." "How did she die?" "Fever. Came on fast. She was healthy 1 week and gone the next. Samuel brought in a doctor from Denver, but there was nothing to be done. That was a hard winter." They drove on. After a while, Helena said, "You knew her, Mrs. Barrett, Catherine." "Yes, she was kind, good sense of humor. She used to patch us cowboys up when we got injured and was not above delivering a lecture about being more careful while she did it." Lucas smiled at the memory. "She made the ranch feel like a home, not just a place to work. When she died, it was like all the warmth went out of the place." "You all miss her," Helena observed. "We do." The Triple Bar Ranch appeared in the distance, announced first by fences and grazing cattle, then by buildings. The main house was a large, sturdy structure built of wood painted white, with a wide porch running along the front. Around it clustered a barn, several outbuildings, and a bunkhouse for the ranch hands. It was isolated but substantial, the home of a successful operation. Lucas drove the wagon up to the main house and set the brake. "Wait here a moment. Let me make sure Samuel is ready for us." He disappeared inside, and Helena sat in the wagon, suddenly nervous. What was she doing here? She knew nothing about ranching or running a ranch house. What if she failed at this too? But then the door opened, and Lucas emerged with a tall, broad-shouldered man whose dark hair was shot through with silver at the temples. Samuel Barrett had the weathered face of someone who spent his life outdoors, and eyes that held a deep sadness even as he offered her a polite smile. "Miss Sutton," he said, his voice a deep rumble. "Lucas tells me you are in need of employment and I am in need of help. Seems like it might work out to both our benefits." Helena climbed down from the wagon, Lucas offering his hand to steady her. "I will do my best, Mr. Barrett. Though I should be honest, I have never worked on a ranch before." "That does not concern me much," Samuel said. "Can you cook, clean, manage a household?" "Yes, sir. My mother taught me all of that." "Then you know more than I do. The house is in a state, I will warn you. I have been focused on keeping the ranch running and not much else." He paused. "My daughter may be difficult at first. She is not happy about the idea of another housekeeper." Lucas explained the situation, Helena said. "I understand. Good." Samuel gestured toward the house. "Come on then. I will show you around." The interior of the house confirmed Samuel's warning. Dirty dishes were stacked in the kitchen, dust covered every surface, and general disorder prevailed. But the bones of the home were good. Helena could see that. Large windows let in plenty of light, the rooms were well proportioned, and there were signs everywhere of a place that had once been well loved and cared for. A woman's touch, now absent. "Your room would be this one," Samuel said, opening a door off the kitchen. It was small but private, with a single bed, a chest of drawers, and a window overlooking the ranch yard. Catherine's clothes are still in our room upstairs. You are welcome to any of them that fit. No sense in them sitting unused." "That is very generous," Helena said. Samuel shrugged. "Practical. Lucas tells me you lost your belongings in a robbery. That is not your fault." The simple acceptance in his words nearly undid Helena. After Frederick's rejection and the town's judgment, Samuel Barrett's matter-of-fact kindness was almost too much to bear. "Where is Lily?" she asked. "Out in the barn, most like. She spends more time with the horses than she does in the house." Samuel's expression grew troubled. "I will bring her in to meet you at supper. Speaking of which, that would be your first task. There is a larder full of supplies but nothing prepared. We have been living on beans and jerky for the past 2 weeks since the last housekeeper left." Helena squared her shoulders. "Cooking she could do." "What time do you take supper?" 6 o'clock. "There are 6 of us in total. Me, Lily, Lucas, and 3 other ranch hands, Jack, Tom, and Pete. Fair warning, they are not used to women being around anymore, so they may be awkward at first." "I can manage," Helena said with more confidence than she felt. Samuel nodded and left her to settle in. Helena unpacked her few belongings, which took all of 2 minutes, then went to explore the kitchen properly. The larder was indeed well stocked with flour, beans, salted pork, potatoes, canned vegetables, and various other staples. There was a good-sized stove and plenty of pots and pans, all of them needing a wash. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. First, she tackled the dishes, heating water and scrubbing until everything was clean. Then she assessed what she could make for supper with the time and ingredients available. Pork chops, fried potatoes, beans, and biscuits. Simple but filling, the kind of meal working men would appreciate. She was just sliding the biscuits into the oven when Lucas appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Need any help? I thought you would be working," Helena said, brushing flour from her hands. "I am the foreman. Part of my job is making sure everything at the ranch runs smoothly, including the house." He leaned against the doorframe, watching her. "You are already making a difference." "I cannot remember the last time this kitchen looked so orderly." "It was in terrible condition," Helena said. "How has Mr. Barrett been managing?" "Barely. Samuel throws himself into the ranch work to avoid thinking about anything else. Lily does the same with her horses. And the rest of us have been trying to keep things from falling apart completely." Lucas paused. "I know this is not what you imagined when you came west." "Nothing has been what I imagined," Helena admitted. She wiped down the table, needing something to do with her hands. "But perhaps that is not entirely a bad thing. My imagination seems to have led me astray." "How so?" Helena hesitated, but something about Lucas invited confidence. "I imagined that answering a matrimonial advertisement would be practical, safe. I thought if I was careful and chose well, I could build a good life, even without love. And now I think I was a fool to believe that safety could be found in the good opinion of others." Frederick Chambers seemed respectable, but his respectability meant nothing when tested. "You, on the other hand, have a questionable reputation, yet you are the only person who has shown me genuine kindness." Lucas looked down at his boots. "I am not sure I deserve that much credit. I did what anyone decent should do. But most people do not," Helena said softly. "That is what makes it count." Their eyes met, and Helena felt that strange connection again, that sense of recognition. Lucas cleared his throat and straightened up. "I should let you finish. Supper smells good already." He left, and Helena turned back to her cooking, but she found herself thinking about the cowboy with his quiet strength and his understanding of what it meant to be judged unfairly. At 6 o'clock, Helena had the table set and the food ready. Samuel came in first, followed by Lucas and 3 other men who had clearly made an effort to wash up and comb their hair. They introduced themselves awkwardly as Jack, Tom, and Pete, all of them looking surprised and pleased to see a proper meal laid out. "Where is Lily?" Samuel asked, his voice taking on an edge. "I will fetch her," Lucas said, heading back outside. He returned a few minutes later with a girl who could only be Lily Barrett. She had her father's dark hair and her mother's delicate features, though her expression was anything but delicate. She looked at Helena with open hostility. "Lily, this is Miss Sutton," Samuel said. "She is our new housekeeper. I expect you to treat her with respect." "Hello, Lily," Helena said, keeping her voice friendly but not overly sweet. She had learned long ago that children could smell insincerity a mile away. Lily said nothing, just slumped into her chair and glared at her plate. The meal proceeded in awkward silence for the first few minutes, but then Pete complimented the biscuits, and Tom mentioned that the pork chops were the best he had had in months, and gradually conversation began to flow. Samuel talked about ranch business, plans for moving cattle to new grazing land. Jack told a story about a stubborn horse. Lucas watched over it all with quiet attention, occasionally catching Helena's eye across the table. Lily ate mechanically, not looking at anyone. After the meal, the men thanked Helena and filed out, leaving her to clean up. She was elbow-deep in dishwater when she heard a small sound behind her. She turned to find Lily standing in the doorway, still wearing that hostile expression. "You will not last," the girl said. "None of them do." "Maybe," Helena agreed, surprising her. "Or maybe I will. You will have to wait and see." "I do not want you here. I understand that." Helena dried her hands and faced the girl directly. "You do not know me and you miss your mother. I am not trying to replace her. I am just here to help your father and to do a job." The others said that too. Did they mean it? Lily frowned, clearly not expecting that question. "I do not know." "Well, I do mean it. I am not looking for a daughter, Lily. I am looking for a place to stay and work to do. If you want to hate me, that is your choice, but it seems like a lot of effort for both of us." The girl stared at her for a long moment, then turned and ran upstairs. Helena heard a door slam. "That went better than I expected," Lucas said from the doorway, making Helena jump. "You were listening." Wanted to make sure she did not try anything. "Last housekeeper got a bucket of water dropped on her head on her first day. He came into the kitchen. You handled that well. I doubt she will be any less difficult tomorrow." "No, probably not." "But you treated her like a person instead of a problem. That is more than the others did." Lucas picked up a dish towel. "Let me help with this." "You do not have to, I know." They washed the remaining dishes together in companionable silence. Helena found herself acutely aware of Lucas's presence beside her, the way their hands occasionally brushed in the soapy water, the warmth of him in the cooling evening air. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Why did you never marry? You are what, 30? 29. And I never married because I was too busy running from my past to build a future." He dried a plate carefully. "Hard to ask a woman to share your life when you barely have one yourself. But you have one now. You have a steady job, a place here. I do. But the reputation follows you. Women in town hear the stories and decide I am not worth the risk." He glanced at her. "Not that I have been looking particularly hard, to be honest." "Why not?" Lucas set down the plate and turned to face her fully. "Because I got tired of being judged by things I did not do. Got tired of trying to prove myself to people who had already made up their minds. Seemed easier to just focus on the work and not worry about the rest." "That sounds lonely," Helena said quietly. "It is. But so is being married to someone who never quite believes you are who you say you are." He paused. "What about you? Was Frederick Chambers the first man you considered marrying?" "There was someone in Philadelphia. A banker's clerk. We courted for nearly a year very properly. Then my parents died and the debts came to light, and suddenly he remembered he had a second cousin he was practically engaged to. Funny how quickly he remembered that. Helena rinsed the last pot. After that, I decided practical was better than romantic. Look where that got me. Here, Lucas said. It got you here. Helena looked up at him, at this man who had shown her more kindness in 2 days than Frederick had in 6 months of letters. Is that a good thing? I think it might be, Lucas said, his voice quiet. Too soon to tell for sure, but I have a feeling about it. Helena felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. She told herself it was just gratitude, just the natural response to someone who had helped her when she needed it. But she suspected it might be something more. Over the next few weeks, Helena settled into the rhythm of ranch life. She rose early to prepare breakfast for the men, spent her days cooking, cleaning, and trying to restore order to the house. She washed clothes, mended tears in work shirts, polished the windows until they gleamed. Slowly, room by room, the house began to look like a home again. Lily continued to be difficult, though her pranks were smaller than Helena had been warned about. A bit of pepper in the stew. Helena's hairbrush hidden. Small acts of rebellion that Helena chose to mostly ignore, responding only with calm acknowledgement that she knew what the girl was doing and was not leaving over it. Samuel proved to be a fair but distant employer. He thanked her for her work, paid her wages promptly, but kept himself occupied with ranch business, often riding out early and returning late. He ate his meals quietly, occasionally asking about household needs, but otherwise seemed lost in his own thoughts. The other ranch hands warmed to her quickly. Jack was the oldest, in his 50s, with a bad knee and a talent for storytelling. Tom was in his 30s, quiet but kind. Pete was the youngest at 24, friendly and always ready to help carry heavy items or fix things around the house. But it was Lucas that Helena found herself watching for, listening for. He stopped by the house several times a day, sometimes with a legitimate question for Samuel, sometimes just to check on how things were going. He brought her wildflowers once, claiming he had just happened to see them and thought they might brighten up the kitchen. Another time he fixed the squeaky hinge on her bedroom door without being asked. They fell into a pattern of talking in the evenings after supper, when the work was done and the others had retired to the bunkhouse, or in Samuel and Lily's case, to their own rooms. They would sit on the porch as the stars came out, and Lucas would tell her about the ranch, about his life before Triple Bar, about his dreams for the future. Helena found herself sharing things she had never told anyone. Her fears when her parents died. Her shame at having to consider marrying a stranger for financial security. Her grief for the life she had imagined and lost. "You regret coming west?" Lucas asked one evening about a month after her arrival. Helena considered the question. "I regret what happened. The robbery, Frederick's rejection, all of that. But no, I do not regret leaving Philadelphia. There was nothing left for me there. And here," she looked at him in the gathering darkness, "here there is possibility. I am not sure what kind yet, but that is more than I had before." Lucas reached over and took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers. "For what it is worth, I am glad you came. The house has not been this well run since Catherine died, and Samuel is starting to come around. I heard him whistling the other day, first time in 2 years. And Lily put a frog in my bed yesterday," Helena said dryly. Lucas laughed. "But you did not quit. You just returned the frog to the pond and carried on. She is running out of ideas, I think. Pretty soon she will have to accept that you are staying." "If I am staying," Helena said. "I have not decided about that yet." "No." Lucas's thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand. "What would make you decide to stay?" Helena's breath caught. She knew what he was really asking. She could feel it in the way he looked at her, in these stolen evening moments, in the careful way he always made sure she was all right. Lucas Lawson was falling in love with her, and the terrifying, wonderful thing was that she was falling in love with him too. But she was afraid. Afraid of trusting her judgment again. Afraid of what people would say about the ruined woman and the cowboy with the questionable past. Afraid of being hurt again. "I do not know," she said honestly. "I am still figuring that out." Lucas nodded, not pushing, though she could see the disappointment in his eyes. He squeezed her hand and let go. "Take your time. I am not going anywhere." The next morning, Helena was surprised when Lily appeared in the kitchen before breakfast, dressed for the day. "Can you teach me to make biscuits?" the girl asked abruptly. Helena blinked. In all the weeks she had been here, Lily had never asked to learn anything. "Of course. Wash your hands and put on that apron hanging by the door." For the next hour they worked together in the kitchen. Helena showed Lily how to measure the flour, cut in the butter, knead the dough just enough but not too much. The girl was focused and careful, clearly wanting to get it right. "My mother used to make biscuits," Lily said quietly as they waited for them to bake. "Every Sunday morning." "They were the best." "I am sure they were," Helena said, understanding now why this was important. "Yours are good too," Lily admitted. "Different but good." It was the first kind thing the girl had said to her. Helena felt a lump form in her throat. "Thank you, that means a lot." When the biscuits came out of the oven, golden and perfect, Lily's face lit up with pride. At breakfast, she announced to the table that she had made the biscuits herself, with Helena's help. Samuel looked at his daughter with obvious surprise and pleasure. "They are excellent, sweetheart," he said. "Best I have had in a long time." Lily beamed. Then she looked at Helena. "Will you teach me to make other things too? If you want to learn, I will teach you," Helena promised. After that, things shifted. Lily was not suddenly transformed into an easy, agreeable child, but the open hostility vanished. She started spending time in the kitchen, learning to cook. She stopped hiding Helena's things and putting creatures in her bed. She even smiled sometimes. Samuel noticed. "I do not know what you did," he told Helena one afternoon, "but Lily has not been this happy since her mother died. You have a gift with her." "She just needed to feel like I was not trying to erase her mother's memory," Helena said. "And maybe to have something of her mother's that I could help her keep. Catherine's recipes, her way of doing things." Samuel nodded slowly. "That is wise. Thank you, Miss Sutton, for everything you have done here." Fall came to the Colorado plains, bringing cooler temperatures and the hard work of preparing the ranch for winter. Helena spent her days preserving food, making sure there were enough supplies laid in. She sewed warmer clothes for Lily, whose old ones no longer fit, and patched the men's winter gear. Lucas spent more time around the house now as the outdoor work slowed. He taught Helena to ride, taking her out on a gentle mare named Daisy. She was terrified at first, but Lucas was patient, walking beside her until she got comfortable, then teaching her to trot and eventually to canter across the prairie. It was during one of these rides, with the autumn sun warm on her face and the wind in her hair, that Helena realized she was happy. Truly, genuinely happy in a way she had never been in Philadelphia. Here, she had purpose and friends and the kind of simple satisfaction that came from good work well done. And she had Lucas. They had not spoken again about feelings or the future, but the tension between them had grown. Every accidental touch lingered. Every shared glance held meaning. Helena knew it was only a matter of time before something had to give. It happened on a Sunday evening in October. Samuel had taken Lily into town for a church social, wanting to encourage his daughter's newfound willingness to be social. The other ranch hands had ridden out to check on some fences at the far end of the property. Helena and Lucas were alone at the house. They sat on the porch as usual, but tonight felt different, charged somehow. "Helena," Lucas said, and her name in his voice made her shiver. "I need to tell you something." "All right." He turned to face her fully. "I love you. I have been in love with you for weeks now. Maybe since that first day when you were so brave standing in that street with your world falling apart. I know you have been hurt. I know you have reasons not to trust. But I need you to know that I love you, and if you will have me, I will spend the rest of my life proving that I am worthy of your trust." Helena's heart was pounding so hard she thought he must be able to hear it. "Lucas, you do not have to answer now," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know I could not keep carrying it around inside anymore." "Lucas," she said again, reaching for his hand. "I love you too." He went very still. "You do?" "Yes, I have been afraid to admit it, even to myself. But yes, I love you. You are the best man I have ever known, and I do trust you. I think I have trusted you from the beginning, even when I had no reason to." Lucas let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Then he leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and kissed her. It was gentle at first, almost tentative, as though he could not quite believe this was happening. But then Helena's arms went around his neck, and his hands found her waist, and the kiss deepened into something urgent and real and full of all the feelings they had been holding back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "I do not have much to offer. I have saved some money, but not a lot. I am just a cowboy with a past that people do not forget. But I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone, and I will do everything in my power to make you happy." Helena laughed, feeling tears slide down her cheeks, happy tears this time. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." Lucas kissed her again and again, until they were both laughing and crying and holding each other tight enough to hurt. "When?" he asked. "How soon can we do this properly?" "We should talk to Samuel first," Helena said practically, even as her heart sang. "I do not want to leave him without a housekeeper. We will figure it out, but Helena, I want to be clear. When we get married, you are not working as a housekeeper anymore. You are my wife. We will figure out our own place, our own life. Where will we live?" The practical concerns were pushing through the joy now. "I have been saving to buy land," Lucas said. "There is a parcel available about 10 miles from here, near the river. It is not much, but it has good grass and water. I could build a house, start my own small operation. It would take time, but we could do it together." Helena thought about that. A small ranch of their own, building something together, making a life together. It sounded wonderful. "Yes," she said, "I want that." They stayed on the porch until they heard the wagon returning with Samuel and Lily. Then they went inside, trying to look innocent and failing utterly. Samuel took one look at their faces and grinned. "Well, I will be," he said. "It is about time, you two." "You knew?" Helena asked, startled. "I have eyes, Miss Sutton. Been watching you dance around each other for weeks." He clapped Lucas on the shoulder. "You are a good man, Lucas. Catherine would have approved." Lily looked between them, her eyes wide. "Are you getting married? Is Helena leaving?" Helena knelt down to the girl's level. "Yes, Lucas and I are going to get married, but I am not leaving yet. We need to help your father find a new housekeeper first, and I promise to teach you more cooking, remember? That will take time. But eventually you will go," Lily said, her voice small. "Eventually I will. But you can visit us. Our new place will not be far away." Helena paused. "Change is hard, I know, but it does not have to mean losing people. Your father will still be here, and so will I, just not in the same house. And you are old enough now to ride over and see us anytime you want." Lily thought about that, then nodded slowly. "All right." But you have to teach me how to make pie first. Good pie, like my mother used to make." "Deal," Helena said, pulling the girl into a hug. The next weeks were a blur of activity. Lucas and Helena announced their engagement, which caused exactly the stir in Julesburg they had expected. Some people congratulated them. Others whispered that the ruined woman and the suspected thief deserved each other. Helena found she did not care. Her reputation in town meant nothing. The opinions that mattered were her own, Lucas's, and those of the few good people like Samuel and Mrs. Chen who could see beyond gossip. They were married in late November by a traveling preacher who came through Julesburg once a month. It was a small ceremony in Mrs. Chen's boarding house parlor, attended only by Samuel, Lily, the ranch hands, Mrs. Chen, and a few others who had become friends. Helena wore a simple blue dress that had been Catherine's, altered to fit her. Lucas wore his best clothes and could not stop smiling. "Do you, Lucas Lawson, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the preacher asked. "I do," Lucas said, his voice strong and certain, his eyes never leaving Helena's face. "And do you, Helena Sutton, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do," Helena said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." Lucas kissed her to applause and whistles from the ranch hands. Helena felt like her heart might burst with happiness. They stayed at the ranch for another 2 months while Lucas worked on building their house. It was small, just 3 rooms to start, but solid and well made. Helena continued working as housekeeper, though Samuel had hired a woman from a neighboring town to take over permanently. Her name was Ruth Marsh, a widow in her 40s with a no-nonsense attitude and a gentle way with Lily. Helena felt good about leaving the Barretts in her capable hands. In January of 1879, on a cold, clear day with snow on the ground, Lucas and Helena moved into their own home. It was not much, Helena thought as she looked around the bare rooms, but it was theirs. A place they had built together, where no one could judge them or tell them they were not good enough. Lucas came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "What do you think, Mrs. Lawson?" Helena leaned back against him, savoring the sound of her new name. "I think it is perfect." They spent that first winter alone together, learning each other, building their life. Lucas worked on improving the land and planning for the cattle he would buy in the spring. Helena made the house a home, sewing curtains, building furniture from scraps, turning the bare rooms into a place of warmth and comfort. They were snowed in for days at a time, which suited them just fine. They read together by the fire, cooked together, made love and talked late into the night about their dreams for the future. Helena taught Lucas to read better since he had only basic skills. He taught her about ranching, about cattle and horses, and the rhythms of the land. Samuel and Lily visited when the weather allowed, bringing supplies and news from the outside world. Lily was thriving under Ruth's care, but still came to Helena for special cooking lessons and girl talk that Samuel could not provide. The visits were always cheerful, full of laughter and catching up. Spring came, and with it, Lucas's first cattle purchase. Just 20 head to start, but they were healthy animals and good stock. He and Helena worked together to care for them, mending fences, checking on the herd, planning for growth. By summer, Helena knew she was pregnant. She told Lucas one evening after supper, handing him a tiny knit bootie she had been secretly working on. He stared at it for a long moment, then looked up at her with wonder in his eyes. "We are having a baby, we are," she confirmed, laughing at his expression. Lucas whooped and swept her up in his arms, spinning her around the room despite her protests that he would make her dizzy. When he finally set her down, his hands were shaking. "I am going to be a father," he said, as though he could not quite believe it. "You are going to be a wonderful father," Helena told him, taking his hands. "Our child will be so lucky to have you." "To have both of us," Lucas corrected. He pulled her close. "Helena, you have given me everything. A home, a life, a future, now a child. I never thought I could be this happy." "Neither did I," she whispered against his chest. "Neither did I." Their son was born in March of 1880, a healthy baby boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark auburn hair. They named him Samuel Lucas Lawson, after the man who had given Lucas a second chance and made everything else possible. Samuel Barrett was deeply touched when they told him. He held his tiny namesake with surprising gentleness for such a big man, and told them that Catherine would have loved this baby, loved seeing Helena and Lucas so happy together. Lily, now 14, appointed herself as the baby's guardian and visited constantly to help and to hold him. She was growing into a lovely young woman, her grief finally loosening its grip enough to let joy back in. The years passed in the way years do when life is full and good. Lucas's small ranch grew steadily. He earned a reputation as an honest dealer and a skilled rancher. The old stories about him faded as new stories took their place, stories about his hard work and his devotion to his family. Helena became known as one of the best cooks in the county, and she took in some sewing work when time allowed, though raising Sam kept her plenty busy. Their home was always open to travelers, to friends, to anyone who needed a meal or a place to stay. When Sam was 3, Helena gave birth to twin girls, Emma and Grace. Lucas was beside himself with joy and terror at the prospect of raising daughters. Helena laughed at his fears and promised him they would figure it out together, just as they figured out everything. Lily came to stay with them for a month that summer to help with the twins. She was 17 now and being courted by the son of a neighboring rancher. Helena gave her advice about men and marriage, about holding on to yourself even as you gave your heart away. "You were so brave," Lily told her one evening as they sat on the porch, the babies asleep inside. "Coming west alone, losing everything, starting over. I do not know if I could do that." "You are braver than you think," Helena said. "You survived losing your mother and found a way to live fully again. That takes tremendous courage." Lily was quiet for a moment. "I am glad you came to Triple Bar. I know I was awful to you at first. You were hurting. I understood that." "Lucas is good for you," Lily observed. "And you are good for him. You fit." Helena smiled. "We do." Samuel Barrett remarried when Helena and Lucas had been married for 5 years. Ruth Marsh had finally worn down his resistance with her patient kindness and her refusal to replace Catherine, but rather to honor her memory while building something new. It was a quiet wedding, but Samuel was happier than he had been in years. Lily married her rancher's son in a big celebration the next summer. Helena and Lucas attended with their 3 children, Sam now 5 and the twins just turned 2. It was a joyous occasion, made more so by the knowledge that Lily's happiness had once seemed impossible. More children came for Helena and Lucas. Another son they named Thomas, then years later a surprise daughter they called Catherine, after the woman whose dress Helena had worn to her wedding and whose kindness still lived on in all their lives. The ranch prospered. Lucas became one of the most respected ranchers in the county, known for his fair dealings and his willingness to help others. Men who had once whispered about his past came to him for advice and counted him as a friend. His reputation was rebuilt, not through defending himself but through living a life of integrity. Helena's own reputation transformed as well. The story of the ruined woman who arrived in torn clothes became instead the story of the brave pioneer who built a life from nothing, who raised a beautiful family and kept a welcoming home. The gossips moved on to fresher scandals, and eventually forgot they had ever thought poorly of Helena Sutton, now Helena Lawson. But Helena never forgot. She never forgot what it felt like to stand in that street, utterly alone and judged by circumstances beyond her control. So when others arrived in town under clouds of scandal or suspicion, she was always the first to offer help, to see the person rather than the story. Mrs. Chen became a beloved grandmother figure to Helena's children, teaching them to cook Chinese dishes and telling them stories about the old country. When she grew too old to run the boarding house alone, she sold it and moved into a small house Helena and Lucas built for her on their land. She lived to the age of 82, surrounded by people who loved her. On their 10th anniversary, Lucas took Helena back to Julesburg for the night. They stayed at the hotel, had dinner at the restaurant, and walked the streets of the town where their story had begun. "You remember?" Lucas asked as they stood at the spot where Helena had stumbled off the stagecoach a decade earlier. "Right here is where I first saw you." "I remember," Helena said. "I was crying. I thought my life was over. And I was thinking that you were the bravest person I had ever seen," Lucas said. "Standing there with your world falling apart but still standing." Helena leaned against him. "And you were the only person who saw me as a person, not a scandal. You saved me, Lucas." "No," he said, turning her to face him. "You saved yourself. You just let me help. There is a difference." She kissed him there in the street, not caring who saw. Let them talk. Let them remember. It did not matter anymore. They walked to Mrs. Chen's old boarding house, now run by a young couple with children of their own. They saw the saloon where Lucas had been standing that day, the stagecoach station, the bank where Frederick Chambers had worked before moving to Denver 3 years ago. "You ever wonder what would have happened if he had not rejected you?" Lucas asked. Helena considered it. "Sometimes. But I think it would have been a terrible marriage. He wanted someone to fit into his idea of respectability, not a real partner. I would have been miserable." "I am glad he was a fool then," Lucas said, "because his loss was very much my gain." They spent the night at the hotel, just the two of them for the first time in years, with the children safe at home with Ruth and Samuel. In the morning, they rode back to their ranch, to their real life, the one they had built together. More years passed. Sam grew into a tall, serious young man who wanted to be a teacher. The twins were opposites, Emma quiet and bookish, Grace wild and adventurous. Thomas had his father's gift with horses and animals. Little Catherine was everyone's darling, bright and funny and impossibly stubborn. Lucas's hair turned silver at the temples, then fully silver. Helena found gray in her own dark auburn hair. They laughed about it together, about growing old but doing it side by side. On their 25th anniversary, their children threw them a party. It seemed like half the county was there, packed into the ranch house that Lucas had expanded over the years to accommodate their growing family. People made speeches about the Lawsons, about their generosity and their strength, about how they had built something lasting. But the best moment came at the end of the night, when everyone had gone home and it was just Helena and Lucas sitting on their porch, watching the stars come out over the prairie. "You have any regrets?" Helena asked, her hand in his the way it had been for 25 years. Lucas thought about it seriously, the way he thought about everything. "Only that we did not have more time. But that is a greedy wish. We have been blessed, Helena, more than I ever dreamed possible." "We have," she agreed. "All because of a terrible day that turned into the best thing that ever happened to me. To both of us," Lucas said. He raised her hand to his lips and kissed it. "My reputation is so much better now, you know. People think I am respectable." Helena laughed. "Mine too. It is very strange." "Do you miss being scandalous?" he teased. "Not even a little bit," she said. "But I do miss those early days sometimes, when it was just you and me against the world." "It is still you and me," Lucas said. "Always has been, always will be. The world just got bigger, that is all. More people to share it with." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars came out one by one. Inside, they could hear the sounds of their children settling in for the night. Sam reading to his younger siblings, the twins giggling about something, Thomas's voice raised in mock outrage, little Catherine's laugh. This was what Helena's ruined reputation had led to. This life, this love, this family. This man beside her who had seen her at her lowest and offered his hand without judgment or conditions. "I love you, Lucas Lawson," she said softly. "I love you too, Helena Lawson," he replied. "Always have, always will." And that, Helena thought as she leaned her head on her husband's shoulder, was the best reputation anyone could have. Not respectability, not what others thought, just this: being loved and loving in return, building a life with someone who saw you truly and chose you anyway. The wind whispered across the prairie, carrying the scent of grass and earth and home. Somewhere a coyote called, and their dog answered with a lazy woof. The stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. Helena and Lucas sat on their porch until late into the night, hands clasped, hearts full, surrounded by everything they had built together. Their children slept safe inside. Their land stretched around them, peaceful and prosperous. Their love, tested by time and trial, remained strong and true. From ruined reputation to redemption, from scandal to love story, from strangers to soulmates who had built a beautiful life together against all odds. That was their story, the story of the woman who arrived in town with nothing and the cowboy who helped her find everything. And it was a story worth telling.